So welcome everyone this afternoon to the Oil and Gas Council's hosted digital dialogue exploring gas opportunities in Nigeria. I'd like to introduce you to our speakers this afternoon. And first of all, we have Dr. Musa Mohammed Zaghi, who is the head of gas monitoring and regulation at the Department of Petroleum Resources. And I'll let him say a few words about himself in a couple of moments. I'd also like to introduce Bambo Ibidapo-Obe, who is currently Commercial Director at Oando Energy Services. Dr. Ibidapo-Obe is an experienced oil and gas professional with over 20 years of experience in the upstream oil and gas segment of the energy industry. Prior to joining Oando Energy Resources, he held various senior management positions within the Oando Group, including head, technology and service delivery, as well as executive assistant to the deputy group chief executive. Before this, he worked at Untitled Chapter, where he managed an array of oil and gas transactions, and prior to that was a facilities engineer at Chevron Nigeria Limited. I'd also like to introduce you to Chichi Emenike, Head Gas Ventures at Neconde Energy Limited. Chichi has over 20 years experience in the oil and gas industry, spanning across the upstream, midstream and downstream sectors. Her capabilities cut across diverse spectrums, including but not limited to business development and strategy, engineering, project conceptualization, deal structuring, stakeholder management and overall contract administration. She holds a BA Engineering and Chemical Engineering from Enugu State University of Science and Technology and an MBA in Oil and Gas Management from the prestigious Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen. Oge Peters is currently Head of Commercial at Savannah Energy. Prior to his current role, Oge was a Commercial Manager at Seven Energy for over 10 years. He is a seasoned energy project development, project financing and commercialization expert in the oil and gas industry. Prior to this, Oge was a relationship manager at Zan Partners, which is a wealth management hedge fund boutique serving high net worth individuals. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator today. Ola Olakaloro is the senior partner and heads the Energy and Infrastructure Group at Advocate Law Firm. He studied at the University of Buckingham, UK, and holds a master's degree in Natural Resources Law and Policy from the Centre for Energy, Petroleum, Mineral Law and Policy, University of Dundee. He is well versed in oil, gas, electricity, and solid minerals law of Nigeria and has advised several oil exploration and production companies, mining companies, multinationals, independent power producers, financing institutions, and high net worth clients on a wide range of assignments. So thank you very much to all of our speakers this afternoon. And Ola, I will pass over to you.
Thank you very much, Amy, for the kind introduction. May I just ask Dr. Zaghi, who's representing the director of the DPR engineer, Awalu, just to introduce himself to our audience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ola. Just like the first speaker said, my name is Dr. Musa Mohammed Zaghi. I am currently the director of gas DPR. Prior to that, I was the head of HSE in DPR. I worked for about 7 years here in DPR. So I have about 27 years industry experience across all the value chains of oil and gas in Nigeria. I don't know whether that's enough or you need more details.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much, Dr. Zaghi. So good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here at the Nigeria Gas Opportunities Round Table and to also see that we're all keeping well and safe given recent events. So we will at this session with our lineup of speakers be looking at the various opportunities in the gas sector in Nigeria. But before we start, I think it's important to put into context why this session could not have come at a more opportune time. I'm sure the following are all familiar words that we have become accustomed to in recent times: price war, cushion, lockdown, flattening the curve. They're all words synonymous with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has impacted all our lives one way or the other. The pandemic has also exposed the fault lines in our economic structure, which is characterized by our over-reliance on crude oil exports for revenue and foreign exchange, our lack of self-sufficiency in terms of food production, and a largely undeveloped manufacturing sector that is incapable of competing both regionally and globally. And of course, lastly, the absence of a functional and well-defined social protection scheme for our poor, as was recently revealed by the widespread looting that we experienced last week. So consequently, we have to rethink our economic policy and chart for ourselves a new prosperous course. This course will no doubt require a paradigm shift, one which must diversify our economy and improve our resilience to external shocks. So the development of our vast gas reserves provides us with this opportunity. And if we can coordinate its utilization, we could rapidly industrialize, and if successful, harness the benefits of some of the regional trade agreements that we've entered into. So without further ado, and taking away what some of the speakers are going to be sharing with us, I shall call on Dr. Zagi with us some of his views with respect to the measures that the federal government has taken over the past decade in developing the gas sector in Nigeria. Dr. Zagi?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ola. We have, in Nigeria, we have a very good gas policy, and the gas policy is a stimulating factor that was deliberately put in place in order to encourage the use of gas resources we have in Nigeria. Normally, Nigeria is a gas nation, not the oil nation, because we have a proven reserves of over 203 TCF of gas, but we have only 37 billion barrels of proven reserves of oil and gas, meaning that even if we don't produce gas, for the next 82 years, we'll be able to sustain ourselves on the gas, as I guess just about 49 years that the oil will last us. So there were deliberate policies that were set up by the federal government in order to encourage the utilization of these God-given natural resources. And these policies include the players out. There is National Gas Player Commercialization Program, which the government asks all the operators to put off their players and provide alternative use of this gas that is otherwise being played. So already we have about 47 companies that are bidding or bidded for these gas players that are going to be out and put for domestic use in Nigeria. And there are also a network code program in which all the players, the shippers, the agents, and the transporters are going to bring the gas into one basket, into one program, in order to make sure that everybody is not cheated, everybody, all these things are on at the level playground. So, and also the Nigerian gas expansion program, which is also a deliberate effort to stimulate the use of gas by Nigeria and Nigerians for industrialization, for usage, and also to serve as a pollution reduction mechanism. Because as a country, we play about 10% of our natural gas. This 10% of natural gas, if we are able to harness it all and put in the domestic market, it will serve as alternative fuels, create jobs for our teeming army of unemployed youths. Like you rightly said, we saw what happened with those level of looting. As a result of unemployment that is in Nigeria, you know. So government has put deliberate efforts to make sure that our God-given natural gas resources are being utilized. We have a lot of opportunities, right from the exploration through the gas processing in the midstream and utilization. So we know that the cost of VMS has also increased tremendously. So gas is an alternative fuel that, at least when harnessed, will make it affordable by all Nigerians, and it will crush the cost of maintenance of our vehicles on the street by almost 60% reduction in the cost. So there are a lot of deliberate efforts by the Nigerian government to make sure that our gas resources are being utilized.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zagi, for that. I'll be coming back to you on some of the programs that you mentioned later on. Oge, if I may come to you, and thank you very much for joining us. Savannah Energy recently entered the Nigeria oil and gas sector with some of the acquisitions that it made. Clearly, Savannah sees the opportunities in the Nigerian gas market. I wonder if you could share with us, from a foreign investor's perspective, what it is that you see in the short, medium, and long term, and as the outlook for the growth of the sector.
Thank you so much, Olaf, for that. Savannah Energy, it's a UK AIM-listed oil and gas energy company focused on West Africa with operations in Niger and in Nigeria. I think just to highlight some of the key opportunities, I think as we've seen in recent years, and actually especially now, there's a lot of marginal and related assets, whether it be independent or IOC owned, that the majors are starting to look away for, especially onshore. I mean, there are moves to divest certain things offshore. So we see a lot of opportunity, and also because of the focus now on ESG across the board, whether it's the oil majors or just generally, I think it's a general global theme now. That also has brought more of the liquids assets into this favor. Of course, gas is not the same, but of course, because they go together, we're also seeing a lot of opportunities there. So for keen, eager, focused independents who are looking for aggressive growth, such as Savannah Energy, I think there's a critical opportunity now, and especially in recent times, to be able to get a pick of quality assets, assets that still have growth opportunities, assets that will make a significant material difference from a portfolio perspective to smaller sized independents such as Savannah, who are looking to grow. So I think there's in the next few years, and also considering oil price trajectory, etc. In the next few years, there's a lot of opportunity for the upstream, well, all across the gas value chain, actually, of course, starting from the upstream.
Thank you again. And Bambo, so COVID is pretty much decimated the upstream oil and gas market. And one of the fallouts in terms of now wanting to achieve efficiency, given the low prices of the current low prices of oil, and of course, the government seeking to maximize revenue from the resource. The GMD of NNPC recently stated that the cost of production is too high. and they're looking to cut it from present levels of $30 to $40 per barrel to $10 per barrel. As a partner to NNPC and to government, do you think that this is attainable given your current operations, particularly when you take into cognizance security issues in the country?
Thank you, Ola, for that. That's a very complex question. I'll try and answer it as simply as I can. First of all, I think I want to latch on to some of what the DPI director, ably represented by Dr. Zagi, has said. Nigeria is effectively a gas country. You know, we just have associated oil, which also happens to be a lot. At Oando Energy Resources currently, our reserves are, well, 2P proven reserves are about 485 million, of which roughly 60% of that is gas. So whilst the oil and gas industry has been decimated by COVID, as you said, in fact, the planet has been decimated by COVID, pretty much all the industries, our gas prices have somewhat remained stable because we sell most of that to NLNG. However, although it's 60% of our reserves, it's not 60% of our revenue. So oil still makes up a larger percentage of the revenue. And the way we see it, as the whole world moves towards a more sustainable energy platform, if you will, there's no way that I believe Africa and Nigeria specifically can jump immediately to renewables without going through a sustainable or cleaner energy form, such as gas. So a lot of our focus is on gas. And as you know, as Dr. Zagi has also highlighted, the government has a lot of great policies, and we're seeing quite a lot of movement in the right direction in completing some of these, the actual activities to make these policies usable. So what are the challenges that we face in the immediate term? You asked me specifically about unit costs. I'm trying to move them from the $30 to $40 range closer to a $10 range. And as I said, it's a complex question, but I'll try and give the simplest answer. If you look at Nigeria and the subsurface, it's not complex. We almost are guaranteed to find the oil. We know where it is, especially in the onshore, swamp, and shallow offshore. All our problems are above ground. So there are surface issues. We have lots of vandalism on the pipelines. And particularly these have downstream effects that actually add a lot to the cost. There could be capex involved in a lot of those repairs. And when you're dealing with a commodity like gas, your contracts also have to be airtight. So if I'm supplying you a certain amount of gas a month or a day, you need to be able to guarantee that, especially when you have downstream customers like power consumers and power plants, etc. So those are the kind of challenges that we face. You have to repair the pipelines. You also need certainty of supply. A lot of times to kind of mitigate against this risk, you have to overplan. And these layers add on additional costs. So if I am, let's take, for example, a crude provider, and I know that I don't want to shut in my wells because there's also an additional cost in bringing them back online. When I have pipeline issues, what I may have to do is build more tanks than I would not ordinarily do. So the additional storage also costs money. The security cost adds on. So these layers are what build up into that cost that makes it $30 to $40 per barrel. So do I believe $10 is achievable? Definitely, because there's so many things that we can now do. It may not go to $10 immediately, but you move in the right direction. So as you've mentioned as well, it's a topical issue. We can't escape it. We've had quite a bit of civil unrest over the past few weeks. I think some of it is still happening in parts of Nigeria, actually. we've had this civil unrest. We know that sometimes the long-term solution is not just to throw money at it. So the same way in our pipelines, the long-term solution is not just to, release armed forces to guard your pipelines and, catch the people. You have to find something for them to do. So at Oando, we're looking at different things like social engineering. It's not just about building schools. You also want to train teachers from that community to be teachers to stay and teach. You want to use a non-visual line of sight monitoring for your pipelines. So things like drones, technology that you can observe and try and arrest the situation as it happens and take the actors out of that environment. So if you're a youth in the community, for example, an impacted community, there is absolutely nothing saying that you cannot be a doctor working in Kaduna. You don't have to remain in the community. So Nigeria is a bigger place than just the oil producing. So those are the kind of things we're looking at. And over time, this cost will go down naturally. It's not the cost of drilling or the cost of production. It's more the cost of securing and ensuring your production that makes a lot of these numbers higher. So I think it's achievable. We just need to work on that timeline and shortening it as much as we can. So it's a good target. We'll get there with the support of the government. It's just to ensure that we can reduce the time.
Thanks a lot, Bambo. You mentioned vandalism, and I'll come back to you on that issue further down the line. Chichi, thank you very much for participating in this discussion. Your company is a leading Nigerian independent, a competitor to both Oge and Bambo. And you're also vigorously pursuing a gas development strategy. My question is the present investment climate one which supports your strategy?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Ola, good afternoon. Dr. Zagi, good afternoon, sir. So I'll delve right into the question. I think the best way to tackle it would be just give a bit of a background, okay, on what we do on OMF 42. So Neconde, in conjunction with her partners, MPDC, have gotten this asset since about 2011. We've been developing it. It's a brownfield asset. So we have infrastructure, which we have had to bring up to speed. And then since December 2018, we've been putting in gas into the domestic market. And then still currently, working on different reforms, technology-wise, trying to bring up to speed in line with the government's, policies on flare, and then also commercializing our gas reserves. We've got huge gas reserves, both associated and non-associated. I'm talking about 3.8 TCF. And so the mandate has been to see how do we put all of this together and then deliver our volumes. Now, we have looked in between from a low risk to a modular phase development stage. Now, when you talk about investments, for us, really, it's always contingent around the bankable market. So that has been the biggest thing that I personally, because I had gas business, okay? So I have personally had to deal with this. For gas business, it is the bankable market. What makes it bankable? You need a market that you need to tie down, a market. For us, if you look at Nigeria, the biggest consumers for gas is the power sector. And we know the issues that are in the power sector, from the illiquidity issues to the forex mismatch issues, even the policy issues. These are the things that we have to deal with. We have partners who are taking the gas, but I mean, when you look at the investment that has to be made and the clarity that has to be put around this investment, those are some of the issues that are worrisome. Every investor wants to see a clear line of sight to whatever monies you're putting on ground. I mean, if you look at what is happening now with the COVID, projects are constrained, capital is constrained, so we've had to go back to the drawing board. On one hand, you are looking to invest your capital, whatever finance you have on hand, wisely. On the other hand, you're also trying to make sure you align with what the government has, put in place. We have a gas flex policy, and we're trying as much as possible to see that we don't run afoul, most importantly, of the gas flare regulations of 2018. So it's been a mix of so many things, discussing with investors, trying to see how we can even get those who have a skin in the game. Like I said before, funding is very contingent on this market. You need to look at BGs, your bank guarantees. The gas value chain is what I also always refer to as a handshake value chain. Is more stringent than your normal regular crude business. You've got a lot of liabilities. I mean, someone had just mentioned the take or pay typically we talk about in the gas industry. You need to make sure the entire value chain is locked down and it's bankable and it's workable. These are the issues we have with power today. So we have begun to even at the, okay, so this is to mention, I also sit on the current council of the Nigerian Gas Association. There are a whole lot of things we've been looking at, including, most importantly, we'll get to that, I know, later in the conversation, the gas pricing. Gas pricing is also important to investors. We have continued to shout it from the rooftops. It will not make sense unless these are market reflective tariffs. You can't continue to put a ceiling and put in monies and expect those monies to come back. Honestly, this is not the Red Cross. Investors have to be sure of what they're doing. We make calculations. Those economics have to work. We need to see policies in place. This is to mention, okay, stuff like the PIB. We need traction on it. So we're happy in the past few weeks. We've seen, I think the PIB has gone first, second reading. We do hope that it's passed very soon, because that kind of comfort is what we're looking for. We don't need policy mismatch. We don't need flip-flopping. We need legal frameworks that are set in place. These are the market enablers to ensure that when you put your money in place, plus or minus, you're sure that it's going to come back. When you speak to investors, be them local, be them international, you want to be able to convince, and not that whilst you're holding these discussions and the money is in place, the next thing, like I always say, the goalpost is removed in the middle of the football match. So I guess we'll talk to this more as we move along, but that will be it from me for now. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Chichi. So based on some of the issues that you just said, I'm going to throw the ball back into Dr. Zagi's court. Okay. One of the issues that Chichi mentioned is offtake and the ability to offtake, right? Which means you being able to evacuate. Okay. There are presently a number of gas evacuation projects being undertaken by the federal government. They're all at different stages of completion, the OB-OB3 and the AKK. Can you share with us what the status of these projects are, right? Because some of the users are here and would like to know how government is enabling or positioning itself to enable investors, and what are the intended benefits that we hope to see from these projects?
Yes, currently, really, the status of this project, I must say, is almost at the tail end about commission. The last time we discussed with NGC, which is the project owner of this very important pipelines, like I said earlier, we have a lot of gas. We are virtually a gas nation. But currently, we don't have a capacity to transmit or transport more than 2.5 billion scf. But with these three major projects of ELFs, OB3, that is Obium Form, Obreko-Okon projects, and the AKK, it will add additional 5.5 billion scf to the Nigerian market. So you can see how important it is, because we have more gas that we can use as a country, but because of the infrastructural deficit, we are unable to use that. So we know all these projects are almost on the complete, except for AKK. But for ELFs and OB3 projects, I must tell you that they are almost at the tail end of commissioning. But for the AKK, it was just launched recently, about last month by the president. And according to what the president said, it will take 2 years to commission. So having said all this, I think these projects are of serious importance to us as a nation, because we have more gas that we are not able to utilize because of our inability to transport to the target market. Locally, we are just been using the virtual transportation means, other means to transport this gas. But I tell you that all these projects are almost at the tail end of completion. That's the status of those projects. I will tell you, OB3 is almost 95% completed. The only problems they had was that of river crossing, which is being addressed and is almost surmounted. So almost 95% completed. ELFS is completed. ELFS is going to add about 1.1 billion scopes. OB3 is going to add 2 billion scopes. So imagine once these projects are completed, how our market will be boosted in terms of this gas availability.
So one of, thank you very much, Doctor. I'm going to remain with you, right? Because Oge, Bambo, and Chichi, as producers, would want to ensure that their resources supplied to the offtake, and that's guaranteed. And one of the attainments of the DPR's director's tenure is the introduction of the gas network code that you mentioned earlier on, which requires the existing arrangements between producers and shippers to migrate to the code within a period of 6 months. Can you share with us some of the features of this code and how they allow for and safeguard private investments, particularly from a third-party access point of view?
Yes, when the minister gave us the deadline, sometime in February this year, when the network code was launched, he gave 6 months to the DPR to make sure that all the existing agreements are migrated to the network code. And we were able to achieve exactly on 10th of August, which is exactly 6 months following the directives. We went back to him and delivered the network code as instructed by him. And the objective of the code is to ensure transparency in the gas business and non-discriminatory access to the gas network. It will promote the gas trading, and it will also attract the investments. So it's a clear set of rules that will govern the transaction between the shippers on one hand and the transporter, which is the NGC, and then was the agents. So for now, we are able to register on the network code, on our platform network code, we are able to register about 4 shippers, and a transporter is NGC. It must only NGC, and the agent, which is GSCL. But for now, we have Gashoff, Axela, Dangote, and Yinzi Energy. They're all registered as shippers on the code. And by the time we are done with this, you'll find out that everything will be transparent. But there are legal problems which we are trying to resolve in trying to transit the existing agreements between the shippers and the off-takers and the agents too, which are inherited. The legal implications of TOFs, that is take OF, and deliver OF agreement, like the various speakers have discussed. Those are issues that we have to find a tactical way of resolving. Now we have some issues. I don't want to mention some companies there, those are issues which we are behind closed doors trying to solve, of taking or paying or deliver or pay, those agreements which are naughty. We are not able to resolve those ones for now. But I tell you, by the time we are done with all this, we are going to have a clear cut out competition and transparency as far as the network code is concerned.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to come back to Chichi and Oge. Chichi mentioned earlier on the issue of pricing, right? So any investment is based on an expected return. And one of the key recurring issues in our discussions with our clients is the issue of the regulated price of gas. Gas pricing will clearly be a key determinant in your investment decisions in gas projects. How favorable are the prevailing pricing mechanisms that abound presently? And do you think the fiscals in the present current draft of the PIB that's in circulation for both gas development and downstream gas supply, do you think that they're investment friendly enough for investment in the gas sector? Chichi, you may want to take it from the upstream perspective, gas development, whilst Oge, in terms of pricing for gas to power, you may, because that's, you guys are supplying gas to power plants, so that you may want to take it from that perspective.
Yes, okay. Ola, thank you. So so this gas pricing thing, so we are the head of the value chain, okay? So how that works out in my economics for opening every well or drilling gas and bringing that gas to the wellhead, and then put it up, infrastructure in between, whether I'm putting it up myself or whether I'm borrowing someone else's facility, and then how much that gas gets eventually to the end user is the big discussion. I mentioned this before, that as long as we have a ceiling, it affects everything we're doing. So there's there are a whole lot of issues. When you look at the unit cost of doing upstream business in Nigeria, is very expensive, all right? Even if you speak to the environment where we're doing this business, you look at the foreign exchange issues, there are a whole lot of indices that come into play. And right now, the gas we're putting in, like I said, we've been doing this since 2018. There are different discussions around gas pricing. So quite recently, the PIB, the draft, the one we've seen, is trying to, has in place some gas utilization incentives, one being this pricing, but there's a little bit of a concern there, which is we're wondering if it would make sense to lock down a price in a law, because the truth is there has to be a method onto how we arrive at these things. We have an entire value chain, okay? So even from the upstream, you've got the LDCs, you've got the shippers, you've got the transporters. There are different people along this value chain, and there has to be a roundtable engagement. I know the minister has put up a committee which is looking at this. And so we have a bit of concern, even particularly at the NGA, at the Nigerian Gas Association, about locking in a price in the PIB. As it is, to be specific, the pricing that is there seems to be a bit better than what we've always known, which is the pricing really to the floor price to gas to power. But for us, I still say there are a whole lot of indices that come into play. When you put these monies, when you pull in this money, the cost at which you're putting it, you also need to realize that gas projects are not, you don't cash out on your gas projects that far. These are longer term projects. So even the financing mix, how you get your finance is a discussion. You need to look at your financing strategy as it informs even the capital expenditure that needs to be put on ground. So just to speak that we're beginning to look at carbon. So gas is a cleaner energy. You've got financing now that financing, you've got cleaner energy, carbon rating energy, green energy financing. You've got, and even recently, I think that CBN launched a 250 billion intervention fund for gas-based projects. Those are some of the financing that we can begin to look at to see if we can get tenures that are better, that can help us to, get that wiggle room. Because with your gas projects, even as much as they can serve as a hedge in a business, the truth is you don't have that much room, not that much wiggle room of flesh, if I may say, that you have with your crude business. So for us, gas pricing continues to remain the big lacuna in the room. And we continue to say a willing buyer, willing seller environment is the best way to go. After a while, you will have what we have in the GSM industry today, which is you will have so many players at least coming into play. Even the advent of the network code, will have open up the market. And then eventually things will even begin to pan out, even in the power sector. The whole onus goes right back to this gas pricing thing. We have to allow the market to the tariffs to become market reflective tariffs. That's the only way we're going to do this. No investor is going to put money down where you have a ceiling and then you're trying to juggle other things. I mean, look at the environment here. And then just to add before I end quickly, the fiscals is also an important part of the PIB that we're waiting to be passed, because that's the crux of the matter. If you do know, or some of us on this call may know, we don't have the best fiscals, for doing business in the oil and gas industry in the world. So we need to begin to look at these things. Like I said, the regulated pricing regime is not going to cut it. We need to understand that, as it is now, capital everywhere in the world is looking to where it can go to for the quickest return. These days, investors are looking for value-driven projects, not volume-driven. So all this talk about we've got so quantity of crude and all that is not cutting it. The world has moved ahead and we need to realize that. Thank you.
I just add to what Chichi said. Well, being sort of in the gas space since about, if we start counting from 2010, I mean, we have always been, commercially price driven, and at times out of step with existing regulations, just in order to address all the issues that Chichi mentioned. I think also when you're consolidated across the value chain, or the more consolidated you are across the gas to power value chain, then the more the impact you can feel, assess, and actually optimize on pricing. So of course, today we know that gas to power regulated pricing is $2.50 for the gas, and then the 80 cents for the transportation. So that's a total of $3.30 per MMBTU. In my mind, I'm regulation light in the sense that, from a market's perspective, I think the competitive alternative for gas is diesel. I mean, in Nigeria, there's 20,000 gigawatts of self-generation versus 4,000 or 4 gigawatts on the grid today. So, and if we say the price of diesel is in the range of 10 to 12 dollars per MMBTU, I think what once from end to end, whether it's upstream and midstream, downstream producers can get gas or power to the end customers at currently below the cost of diesel, then I'd say 20 or so percent, and obviously without the capex of conversion, then that and you net it back all the way back up to the upstream producer, then you have a market. Then investment can flow. The part of the challenge, just to touch on the grid-based power challenge, it's not just about pricing, because you also need the liquidity and the actual assurance that comes with that pricing. Because again, if we juxtapose against with the crude oil market, I think from a payment security perspective, there's almost no liquidity or payment challenges with crude oil. So part of the challenge with gas is, even though in some instances when the pricing, because I'd say grid-based power pricing is not necessarily the issue, it's more the payment assurance and the liquidity assurance in the gas to power value chain that's more the issue, because in terms from a planning, etc. perspective, it's hard to make those capital investments over a 10-20 year period when the liquidity in the market is fluctuating 20 to 30% at the moment. So that I'd say would be a critical challenge. And then just to touch on fiscals, I think it relates. I know over the years we've had the such things under the PSCs like the Associated Gas Framework, etc., which allows you to net off some of your gas capex against the oil. I know some people have sort of demonized it, etc., but I think in reality, because the opportunity cost of crude oil is so high, what I mean by that is that considering the fact that it's a fully liquid market, there's no payment insurance is close to 100%. From a capital allocator's point of view, to be able to move the dollars that you would use to drill the crude oil or drill the wells or build upstream crude infrastructure, to switch it to gas, you really need the fiscal incentives to actually make it attractive. From the current version of PIB, I see that the royalty rates for upstream gas have dropped to 2 points from 7% to 5%, which is very positive. It's still, I mean, midstream, downstream is still CETA. There is the pioneer status, etc., and some of those other things that help to incentivize gas development. But I think from a gas developer's perspective, there could still be a bit more done to make it more attractive, to make it more appealing, to balance out the incentives for gas versus crude oil, because that is the competition for the dollars when it comes to upstream. So I think we would hope that a bit more is done. As I said, I think with consolidation across the chain, diversification downstream into liquid markets. Again, as I said, the 20 gigawatt self-generation market is much larger, 5 times larger than the grid. So if we can connect the dots from the upstream to the last mile customers, then I think we can see proliferation of gas utilization in Nigeria.
Thanks a lot, Oge. Let me bring in Dr. Zagi here on this issue of pricing, and how do we transition from the regulated price of gas to a willing buyer, willing seller scenario?
Thank you, Mr. Ola. I very much agree with the Chichi submission on the gas pricing. The ultimate aim for all of us is to migrate to willing buyer, willing seller, rather than a regulated prices. But government is regulating the price to deliberately motivate the industrialization of the country, It's a deliberate effort by the government to make sure that there is gas supply to a particular sectors, economic sectors of the nation. So, but eventually, by the time we often cause the access, like I said, by the time we fully operationalize the network code and also complete all the major pipeline projects, we have a lot of, we wouldn't have any transportation challenges. Even the cost of transporting this gas is going to be eliminated. Now, it has been demystified, even by the presence of these virtual pipelines, So it's a deliberate policy of government to make sure that this gas is made available to the country. Not that the government is going to just continue to regulate the market, but the ultimate aim is to make sure that we have the darkest sky. If you travel in Nigeria in the night, despite the over 200 TCF we have of gas, you know, but because of infrastructural deficits and, you know, unavailability of these natural resources, we are still where we are. We are still where we are. We don't use more than about 1 billion scopes. We produce about 8 billion scopes per day. But our NGR here is about 4 billion, but we are using less than 1 billion because of all this. So I assure you, within the next 5 years or so, or even before then, you know, we will naturally transit to willing buyer, willing seller. But the problem we have now is you find that these operators are willing to export this gas, you know, to the outside shores of this land, even selling it there at what price? That's why the government now make that deliberate effort to allocate an obligation for them so as to make our domestic requirement and domestic obligations. But all the things they said, I agree with them, but these are transient arrangement by the government to make sure that this gas is made available. I hope I'm clear, Mr. Ola.
Thank you very much. Yeah, yes, thank you. Bambo and Oge, both your organizations, Bambo in terms of your subsidiary, GasLink, were sort of like leaders and pioneers in terms of gas infrastructure development. Yours in the urban area, Bambo, and Oge, yours, you know, a major project in the south-south with respect to the pipeline, gas to power pipeline. Majority of the infrastructure needed for the evacuation of gas in and around the country, and we've seen that, you know, we need vast investments in that area, is hinged on the availability of financing. As they say, there is no project without finance. So, and this can be challenging in Nigeria. Like I said, AccuGas was a major gas infrastructure project, and so was GasLink. Both presumably were financed locally. Can you share your views on, you know, accessing financing for gas infrastructure projects? You know, what are the key elements that would ensure the viability of some of these evacuation projects that we need to embark on?
Okay, thanks for that, Ola. I think I would be remiss not to touch on the previous conversation that we just had. And I agree 100%. I don't know how this is possible with both sides. So Chichi is correct in terms of the requirement to have a willing buyer, willing seller system. And at the same time, I understand when Dr. Zagi says that we will get there, and the policy we have now is deliberate to channel some of this development in certain areas. However, without talking too much about the past, GasLink is now Accela, which is no longer an Oando subsidiary. I can speak a little bit to some of our current challenges. So we're involved in marginal fields as well. And with the government's push for gas flare commercialization, and also with our own production aspirations, you can't drill more wells if you have nothing to do with the gas. You need to have a gas solution before you drill these wells. And what we found is that whilst there are lots of creative partners that we have that will come up with solutions to help you commercialize your gas, such as mini LNG, CNG, and all those kind of things, the cost is multiples higher. So that means that the gas price that you'll be offered is very low. And really, it's because downstream of them, the gas price is the same, regardless of how you've gotten it out. So we all know and understand that once OB3 comes online, it's going to be a game changer, and some of these projects will be, automatically bankable. But where we are today, without that flexibility in pricing, it's difficult for a lot of these projects to be commercial or bankable. Even for local financing, where they understand our environment, it's very difficult. More or less international finance, where Chichi has mentioned, you have lots of competition for capital, and no one is going to put their money where they're not going to get the best returns. The demand is there. It's very high, especially in power, and the supply is there. So bridging that gap is where it's been very difficult for us. In our largest JV, the now JV that Oando is a party to, we currently run a plant. We own a power plant that generates 480 megawatts of power plants to the grid. So we're also power sellers, not gas sellers. So the gas goes to the plant, and then we just sell the power. And this plant has been very successful. However, we're also working on expanding that by building a phase 2. And some of the challenges we're having is getting a bankable PPA. So these would be the kind of challenges that off-takers will have. If you can't get a bankable PPA, then definitely the plant is going to have a hard time getting finance. And if the plant has a hard time getting finance, then the gas supplier is going to have a hard time getting paid. So it's almost a circular reference. What I would be recommending is you let the free market take over, willing buyer, willing seller. And then as you now have our major infrastructure coming on stream, AKK, OB3, ELPS, and where we're secure in their existence and their supply, there's more confidence. Then if you need to, then you can now start introducing these pricing controls, but not before. I think before has somehow stifled the ability for these infrastructure to come up. I know Chichi mentioned the GSM model, and really I think we don't lean on that model enough when we try and explain our situation. But when they started, it was really expensive, but now that the infrastructure is everywhere, it's ubiquitous, we found that the pricing has gone down naturally.
Thank you, Bambo, for that. Okay?
Sure. So I think just to focus on the financing element of it, say from 2010, in terms of project financing for gas infrastructure, I think it was the early days in the market for project financing. So we rolled out quite a few rounds of project financing on the back of bankable gas sales agreements, obviously with take or pay elements in them. But I think so again, groundbreaking at the time and probably critical to the development of a lot of our gas infrastructure, at least. So I think now where we are, I think the market needs to, or is evolving to a point where the tenors of these project financing are more aligned with corporate type instruments as opposed to infrastructure type instruments. So we're looking at, as opposed to 5 to 7 years, we probably need 15 to 20 year facilities. And it's probably, whether it's corporate DFI or government backed, to incentivize gas infrastructure development, we need funding that aligns with the return profile and the development profile for gas infrastructure projects. So I think so of course, we talk about fiscal, but also on the financing side, on the debt side, because of course equity is what it is, but on the debt financing side, long-term concessionary financing for gas infrastructure processing development projects, I think is critical for the development of that space. And yes, so I think this is some, and again, as we've touched on some of the CBN funding that's been made available. So government is actually already responded in a way to some of these concerns. I think we need to see a lot more. And of course, government. So OB3, AKK, the major trunk lines that government is developing or giving producers and shippers access to major trunk lines that government is developing at, minimal, at the rates that are being discussed is a key enabler, right? And also, I think once we're all, and I think we are all aligned with the fact that gas is a economic multiplier, right? It's an enabler. So it's you don't necessarily need to tax gas itself as an entity. What gas is doing is enables economic activity, and the tax, etc., that the businesses that utilize gas generate is where the government would then make its return. So that mentality and with the funding, I think unlocks a whole lot of molecules and infrastructure to really fuel the economy. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much for that, Oge and Bambo. Dr. Zagi, one of the policies greatly hampered by COVID-19 is local content, okay? With the, cost-saving measures, they're holding back in investments, but yet we're seeking to increase it to 40%. How are we looking to boost local content capacity from the present levels of roughly 20% to doubling it?
Well, despite the COVID-19, there is no any serious stoppage of the activities in at least the regulatory sector of oil and gas. I wouldn't want to say in the entire oil and gas value chain, but the regulatory sector, and indeed the entire oil and gas industry, had, as a matter of necessity, evolve virtual mechanisms to continue with almost all the projects that are otherwise thought impossible before the advent of COVID-19. All the statutory inspections of facilities that will enable us to issue licenses or approvals, we were still doing that even during the COVID-19, virtually. And it is on record that our revenue profile and even the volumes of our reserves, especially for gas, were still on incremental mode during the COVID-19. So, I think I don't have the full detail of the programs of Nigerian content development board, the agency that is responsible for the implementation of local content. But yet there's COVID-19, but we try to boost our in-country capacity building, and we try to reduce the production cost in the mid-term to long-term, because once you improve your in-country capacity building, you will be able to reduce the cost per unit barrel also, because I heard you talk about what GMD said, the intention of the government to bring down the price of production. There are a lot of indices that add up to our high cost of production, including the regulatory cost, including capacity building. Yes,
would the marginal field program, be a way of boosting local content? Because
yes,
I believe
exactly.
the program is geared towards indigenous companies.
Yes, the marginal field is one of those programs that clearly is only exclusive to the
I think we may have momentarily lost okay.
oil companies. Yes.
Go ahead, Doctor.
So, Ola, are you hearing me? Yes, I said the marginal field program we have, it was the national grant. We excluded the oil operators from bidding for those gas flares, you know. It's a deliberate effort to make sure that we increase our local content. And I'm sure it will suffice 40%.
Excellent, thank you very much. Just before we conclude, it wouldn't be good for us to go away without talking about the environment. So we're signatory to the Paris Agreement, which seeks to reduce CO2 emissions to certain levels by 2030. To this end, we've embarked on what Dr. Zaghi mentioned earlier on, which is the Nigerian gas flare commercialization program. And I know that the independents are also required to embark on gas flare projects. So if I may ask each speaker just to contribute to that, perhaps starting off with Dr. Zaghi, just to explain a little bit about what the gas flare commercialization program entails, and then each of Chichi, Oge, and Bambo just talk about what each of their organizations are doing to assist with climate change in that regard. Dr. Zaghi?
Yes, by the time we put off the flares, which we are currently bidding, we will be able to take out about 13 million tons of carbon emission from our environment. And also, by the time people migrate, you know, change their engines, you know, from use of PMS and diesel to use of CNG and LPG and other environmentally friendly fuels, we'll be able to cut significantly amount of emissions to the environment, which also is in accordance with the Paris Convention. You know, alternative fuels, you know, at least will lead to the stoppage of deforestation. You know, once these alternative fuels are available, our trees will not be failed, you know, and we will see a reforestation program coming off, and then we'll be able to even go beyond our expected compliance level by the Paris Convention. So this is one program that is deliberately being pursued so as to make sure that we're in alignment with the accord, the Paris Convention Accord.
Thank you very much. Chichi, if I may come to you very, very quickly.
Okay, Ola. So yeah, so in line with what Dr. Zaghi has said, this is on the back of the 2018 gas flare regulation. So on OML 42, we've gone ahead to put in place a gas flare policy, which is seeking to reduce the social and environmental impact of flaring gas on that asset. What we're trying to do is, in fact, create a hub. So since 2018, we've been exporting gas, we've been gathering gas, and as I speak to you, capital expenditure is being made to put in place more gas, you know, export pipelines, to put in place more compressors. We have what we call the short to medium term accelerated gas projects that we're doing. And all this is geared towards ensuring that we capture gas flares, that we, as much as possible, reduce whatever we're doing, you know, as regards emissions into the environment. when you speak about gas flaring for us, it's not only talking about the gas flare tariff. We're also looking at how do we generate more infrastructure on ground. Sorry, how do we put in place more infrastructure on ground? How do we overall contribute to the entire GDP of the country? So as much as possible on OML 42, we have been doing this in a low risk, accelerated manner, trying to rank our projects. Like I said, capital is not the best right now, but as much as possible, see what is the most expedient to do, what is the most efficient, and make sure we align with the federal government's gas flare commercialization program. Dr. Zaghi knows this very well. We've been working with the regulatory on this in different ways. And this is just to also say that we also want to plead with the regulatories that, for companies who are genuinely doing this, we will appreciate, if this can be done, the regulatory doesn't come for us from a more punitive angle. We're doing all we can with all the current constraints in the Nigerian economic situation to ensure that we don't run afoul of that regulation. I guess for me, that would be it. I think lastly, to also add, even on the flare side, we're currently even installing meters just to ensure that we're very responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chichi. Okay.
Luckily for us, I think since we are predominantly gas, well, aside from actually having a zero flare policy, we actually have zero flares because we are non-associated gas producers, and well, from both marginal fields, there's pretty much no flares. All the gas and the small volumes of associated gas that come to crude are processed and injected into the domestic market. To align with what Dr. Zaghi's sort of vision, there's also that hub there that any other producers with flared gas has a route to market, if you will. So with interconnectivity, we can partner with others to get gas to market. We're also diversifying more downstream, get towards the last mile segment of the market, so that we can facilitate the conversion that Dr. Zaghi was talking about, and the savings, both from economic perspective, so in terms of Naira and Kobo, as well as CO2 in the environment as well. So that conversion from dirtier fuels to gas, it's all aligned. So we are very focused on this, and in terms of our community type outreach as well. We're also working with communities, alternative energy solutions, etc., solar powered community solutions, etc. So we're really focused on the area, and I think we can only do more as time goes on and as the market develops.
Okay, and last but not least, Bambo.
Thank you, Ola. I think just going off the last statement Oge made at Oando as well, we have our Oando Foundation and a new initiative we started, TAP, that focuses on education and feeding less privileged people all over the country. So I felt it's important to mention that given our current situation over the past 2 weeks. In addition to that, of the critical gas development projects that were announced and now that we've confirmed financing from NLNG, at least for the NNPC end of it, 50% of those projects are within the now JV, where Oando owns 20%. So we're contributing a lot to gas development over the next few years. The advantage that we have as Oando is we have a ready home for our gas, and we have a very diverse network to get our gas there to Bonny, to NLNG. So as much gas as we can produce, we have a home for it today. For our marginal field production, we have actually been exempt from the gas flare commercialization at one of our fields because we already had in place a program that we're developing to put out the flares. And in addition to that, before we drill any new wells, we always have a zero flares plan. With OB3 coming on stream, we're actually very excited that gas is always going to have a home, and further makes our oil even more commercial, because what we've had to do in the past is when you're running your economics for the oil, you just, assume that you're not going to get much value for your gas. So it makes a lot more projects more bankable. You spoke about the Paris Agreement and general sustainability and the environment. What we're looking at is we've begun to incubate also sustainable and alternative energy solutions, such that in the next 10 years, we will not be an oil and gas company, and really more of an energy company with a significant amount of that energy coming from renewables. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bambo. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The question isn't whether the resource is available for exploitation, or if investors are willing to develop the reserves and the associated infrastructure to monetize them, but rather it's about having the enabling environment in place. This means our legal, regulatory, and fiscal framework must be one that allows for a private sector-led and driven sector. The need to achieve this with the petroleum legislation presently before the National Assembly, it cannot therefore be overemphasized. I would like to thank our speakers, Dr. Zagi, representing the Director of the DPR, Engineer Walu, Bambo Ibidapo-Obe, Chichi, Emenike, and Oge Peters for taking time out to share their thoughts with us today. And of course, lastly, to thank the organizers, the Oil and Gas Council, for making this platform available for us. Thank you very much.
Ola, thank you very much from me as well. Thank you to all of the speakers. Thank you for taking the time out this afternoon to take part in this very interesting conversation. We look forward to welcoming you back next time. And in the meantime, thank you, Ola, once again for moderating so beautifully, and look forward to meeting you all soon in person.